That's why I go to city council, you know? Yeah.
It is allowed. Is it okay?
You can vote.
Sure what? I'm allowed to vote. Okay.
Ready? Everybody ready?
Good afternoon, Joe.
Waiting for,
Ready, Rudy?
you weren't waiting for me, were you?
Okay. Good
Joel,
evening.
how are you? Not too bad.
Good evening. I'll call to order the Apache Junction Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is Tuesday, July 24th, 2018. It is now 7:00 p.m. And if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Present.
Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Commissioner Frank is excused this evening, Madam Chair. He could not get out of work. We do have a quorum.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. And before I call for a motion, does anyone have any comments or wish to change anything about the agenda or the meeting minutes of July 10th, 2018?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
once again, I'm not happy with the lack of details, but at least now, at least it says discussion has taken place, but I still would like to see more detail. If somebody from the public were to read this, they would get an idea that discussion took place, but they still wouldn't know what was being discussed.
Okay. That your comments are on record. And I will then call for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented and approve the minutes from the July 10th, 2018 regular meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Rudy?
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 against. So moved, Madam Chair.
We'll move on to the public hearings. We have one tonight. Presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of case CUP-3-18, a request by Palo Verde Plaza and Svacha, represented by Adam Ball of Whitney Morris PLC. Rudy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Rudy Esquivias. I'm the Senior Planner. Madam Chair, this case was continued from your meeting of 2 weeks ago on July 10th, 2018. Case CUP 318 is a request for a conditional use permit amendment by Svacha LLC. About a year ago, you granted them a conditional use permit, case CUP-5-17, which conditionally approved a nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary at 1985 West Apache Trail, Suite Number 4. One of the conditions of that approval basically said that if there was a change of ownership or a change of management, they had to come back through a CUP amendment process and basically tell us who the new owners and managers are. There has been such a change with the Svacha LLC. They have not opened yet, so basically they are before us this evening to let us know who the new management and ownership structure is, and they're also requesting an additional 6 months to open the dispensary, and they're also asking an expansion of the floor area approved by the dispensary under the previous conditional use permit. They're requesting to go from about 1,500 square feet to just under 1,700 square feet. By the way, in our staff report of July 10, I think there might have been a typo in there, said 1,500 to 17. It should have said 1,700, plus or minus 1,700. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to be very brief tonight. We do have recommended conditions. In our staff report of July 10, we did go through the criteria criteria for the granting of a conditional use permit for a medical marijuana use. We believe that the site still complies with the criteria. There don't appear to have been any changes in the general neighborhood in the last 9 or 10 months since we last spoke to them. We also went through the criteria for the granting of a conditional use permit in general. We believe that the site still complies with that criteria as far as traffic accommodation, parking, access. It doesn't appear to be a very intense use in the neighborhood. We don't expect any unusual noises, vibrations, those kinds of things. Otherwise, it meets the separation requirements. It meets the zoning district requirements. So both sets of criteria we believe are satisfied. At your last meeting, I think the main issue was that there was still some questions about how the ownership structure and management structure is going to occur, different names, different LLCs, management companies, an overarching ownership company. So you wanted additional clarification on how that structure is formed. We did receive a letter from Mr. Ba, the applicant's attorney, explaining in a little bit more detail how the ownership and management structure works. He also gave us flow chart, which basically explains how that ownership and management entities all tie into Svacha LLC. And we also mentioned that the proposed dispensary at 1985 West Apache Trail is going to operate under the name Nirvana. And one of the questions that was raised was, okay, if something happens over at Nature's Wonder, we know exactly who we're going to go talk to. And I think the local folks that we would be our primary contacts are going to be Sarah and Shiraz Waresh. Okay, in your packets, in the updated memo, there is an email exchange between Mr. Ba and myself. He gives us additional names, and also he specifies that the local operators on a day-to-day basis are going to be Shiraz and Sarah Waresh. Their numbers, their email addresses is in there. So, Madam Chair, I won't go through all the conditions, but basically the conditions that we are recommending are very similar to the conditions we recommended for KCUP 517. A little bit of wording changes. We specified everywhere that it's Svacha LLC. And other than that, not a whole lot has changed. We are still, as far as the important conditions, especially to our folks at PD, is that they be allowed to have unannounced spot checks, just like they do over at Nature's Wonder, just like they do over at the cultivation facility. And we assured Chief Kelly that language would also be included with this CUP. And we did send all the new ownership and management information to Chief Kelly and Captain Mullender at PD. Thus far, they have not expressed any concerns. And Madam Chair, staff, because we believe that the dispensary complies with both the medical marijuana criteria and the citing criteria for a CUP, staff is recommending approval. And you do have some discretion in this case. The fact that there's new people, new owners, new managers involved is pretty straightforward. We can probably accept that. However, the two items of discretion are whether or not you want to give them a 6-month time extension to complete the improvements over at the occupancy at 1985 West Apache Trail, and also whether or not you want to allow them to increase their floor area by about 190 square feet. And aside from that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to go through the conditions if you want to, but that's, once again, exhibits. This is the site plan for the property. The dispensary is going to be located over here on the far east end. Among the conditions of approval are that the main entry be on the east side, so that way their customer traffic is focused on the east side of the building, and hopefully minimize traffic impacts and other type of impacts with the other businesses in the plaza. This was the old site plan under CUP 517. This, well, I gave you a blow-up of this one, but basically this drawing shows you the proposed floor layout, which is this one here, Madam Chair. It's organized just a little bit differently than the previous dispensary, and the growth area is basically right down here. The old dispensary did not include some of this area down here. The proposed revision does pick up a little bit of additional storage and inventory space. So that's the main difference between the 1,500 versus the 1,790 square feet. Some conceptual elevations of the building. The entire east side of the building is going to be stuccoed. We've also asked them to make sure they make their entry features stand out. We've already talked about the evaluation of the criteria. You continued this from your last meeting. We do have a new letter from Mr. Baugh in the staff report, staff recommendation. The other new thing that's in your staff report is last time you asked for us to kind of give you a motion, a template for your motion. Of course, in our staff report, we do cite findings that we believe are applicable to the property. You can use our findings. You might have your own findings. So basically, the motion template that we've given you allows you to fill in the blanks as far as the findings are concerned. We've also double-spaced the conditions in case you want to write any notes, in case you want to make any changes or amendments or add other things to the recommended conditions. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rudy?
No, thank you for creating this
Yeah, the
this
template.
template here. This
You're
is
welcome.
really good. This is-
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Rudy.
Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll have the Mr. Ball come and speak to us.
Thank you very much. Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. Madam Chair, and I think more specifically Chairman Heck, allow me to apologize. I think last 2 weeks ago when I was here, I didn't show sufficient comprehension of the need for the contact info. And since that time, I've thought a little bit more about it. And you alluded to something that I wasn't aware of in the past with a site in the town where maybe there had been a lack of updated information to you guys. And so when you needed to get answers, you didn't know who to go to. That was I wasn't aware of that information. And so after the meeting, once I had a better understanding, I certainly understood it better, the comments that you created. So the information that I shared today is similar to before. Nothing's changed, but I think it's better clarified today, and it wasn't as clear before. And allow me to explain myself even. I'm just the zoning attorney. I don't do the business organization. I don't understand the tax issues. I don't understand the liability or limited liability organization. So I can speak very well to zoning things, but when it comes to business formation entities, there's a different attorney who structures all that stuff, and he's here with me today if you have those questions. But I want to start off by first acknowledging, I think, my failure last time. I can tell you that Savacha LLC is a nonprofit LLC that holds this dispensary registration certificate. Across Arizona, there's 130 plus different dispensary certificates, each owned by separate nonprofit LLCs. But in almost every circumstance, they usually have a management company that runs these facilities on a daily basis. Sometimes they contract with a third party. Sometimes it's their own management company, like in our case here. So Randy Taylor Consulting has the same members as Savacha LLC. It all feeds up to the same tree. And because they have so many different dispensaries across Arizona and the nation for that matter, sometimes they'll use somebody with local knowledge and contract with them. And so that's why Shiraz was here, because he'll be the local daily operator. At the end of the day, I think what's important is staff, this commission, the management here, they need to understand, if you got an issue, who do you call? Who do you talk to? And I think that was a little bit lost on me last time, so I certainly appreciate the chance to come back for you today. Shiraz and Sarah are the daily operators. We've given the emails for both of them and the phone numbers for both of them to staff, so they have that on record. I'm pleased to know that the planning and police department have looked at those names too, and so they're comfortable with that. That issue aside, I know it's not a requirement in the zoning code to provide ownership and management, but I do see the necessity of it, and that's why I think it was added as a stipulation beforehand, and I think it stays as a stipulation because if an ownership changes in the future, you still need to know who that person will be, who's held accountable. At the end of the day, you're talking about accountability. That issue aside, we still continue to meet all the land use findings to approve this use permit, and they're the same conditions that existed when it was approved last year. It meets the minimum underlying zoning, it meets all the spacing requirements, and it meets all the operational requirements like no drive-throughs, for example, no benches for loitering, things like that. All the legal standards that are required in your zoning code are met today and will continue to be met. The addition of 190 square feet really isn't much, but it gives a little bit of a better storage and inventory room. And then lastly, although I think we can complete this request much sooner than 6 months, when I filed this, it was, I don't know, May or April, and so 6 months was looking more towards like the fall. We were ready to file plans and permits, but we don't want to take that step until we know it's approved, and then we can file them within the next couple of days of the approval. So with that being said, I appreciate the chance to come back and clarify that for you, and if it hasn't been sufficient, or if there are questions I can't answer, I do have Sean Barbarian with me who can maybe, if you feel like it's necessary, to explain like the tax and business entity organization and why that's such. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ball or any of the other people that are with him?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Ball, thank you for that, and you're exactly right. I think we're victims of our own past, and we learned the hard way, so I appreciate your doing this to provide that clarity for us. So that Shiraz Waraish and his wife, they're going to be the folks that are going to be managing that dispensary on a day-to-day basis.
Boots on the ground.
Okay, boots on the ground, okay.
Okay. Willie, anything? Gentlemen, this way? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. Got off easy tonight. I'll open this up to the public. Does anyone here in the public wish to speak on this item? No one? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public portion and open this up for discussion. Does anyone have any comments? The only comment that I'd like to make as far as the two things is they're wishing to increase the size. That's all internally. It's nothing on the outside of the building, so I don't see any difference one way or another increasing the size. And the other, as far as them asking for an additional 6 months over what the original request from last year was, well, to be honest, I don't think it makes much difference one way or another, and I'd rather give them 6 months to do this right than force them to stick to just 2 months from now, and who knows what we might end up having. So that's my 2 cents worth. Anyone else?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I certainly am in accord with you on that. The only thing that there was the issue, a concern about parking. However, I think with their willingness to create the parking on the east side of the building and providing some handicap parking, I trust that will ease the burden on that north side parking, because that does get pretty crowded
Yeah.
there at certain times of day. So, but I think otherwise, I think it should be satisfactory.
Okay. Willie, anything? Nothing?
He just expressed parking. That was a concern I had as well. I'm okay with that.
Gentlemen,
Madam Chair.
anything?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Since that's about it, then I'll call for a motion.
Madam Chair, before I do the motion, I'd like to kind of go through and make certain that the commission is satisfied with or has any issues related to the findings. First finding is the adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities, and services to accommodate the proposed use. I don't see any concerns. I don't feel there's any issues that would negatively impact the area. Does anyone have any concerns about that?
No?
I will take by your silence that you don't. B, negative impacts arising from emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. Again, as I'm looking at this application, I don't see that any of those issues would likely come to fruition. Anyone have any other observations?
Not because it says how everything must be done, so those are all contained, so.
Right,
no.
right. All right, C, contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values. Again, I don't see any. I know that there were some concerns expressed in the past about some of the clientele that frequent the bar there. And I know from the bar owner herself, she has expressed concern in the past relative to folks that loiter back there. However, I would assume that every effort would be made to secure this building and this facility so that there wouldn't be any issues, or that there wouldn't be any loitering of clients along the side of the building either. Does anyone have any concern about that?
No, especially since if there is any issues from the police or anyone, the CUP can always be brought back to us.
Right.
So,
All right. All right, D, compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. Certainly this building is surrounded by other commercial properties. And I don't foresee that it would create any other substantially difficult or adverse issue for those businesses. Any observations?
continue.
All righty. All right, conformance with the general plan and city policies. I think according to the staff, the application in the dispensary doesn't conflict with the plan's downtown mixed-use land designation, so it would seem that it would certainly be in compliance. Again, any disagreements, any comment? F, screening and buffering of uses. Obviously, this site's been around for a long time. Buffering requirements were in place. I know there are going to be there's some expectation for, from buffering with some landscaping around the building, planters, that sort of thing, and adding some stucco treatment to the east side of the building. So I think it would certainly be acceptable and in compliance. Again, any other observations? Okay. And the last finding, the unique nature of the property, use and/or development's physical characteristics. We recognize that the property has a driveway, parking access off 3 adjacent streets. It's not in a major flood zone. So I think it has I think it certainly would be, its unique nature, or there's not such a unique nature that there has to be special accommodation made. Again, any comments, questions? No. All right, then.
So you can continue with your
I'll
motion.
continue, all right, so, all right, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve case CUP-3-18, a conditional use permit amendment request by Svacha Medical Marijuana Dispensary located at 1985 West Apache Trail, Suite Number 4, represented by Adam Baugh of Withy Morris PLC, to inform the city of a change in ownership and management as described in the narratives dated June 14th and July 17th, 2018, to request a 6-month time extension for the completion of the project to March 12, 2019, and to increase the floor area of the dispensary by 190 square feet in accordance with drawings submitted with case CUP-3-18, subject to the findings and conditions of approval listed below. So in terms of the findings, the commission has determined that there is the adequacy of roadways and off-street parking and public facilities is adequate to meet the needs of this business and this operation. The commission has also determined that there would be no negative impacts arising from any unacceptable emissions, odor, dust, gas, noise, etc. C, the commission has determined that this operation in the dispensary is not going to contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values due to their having secured the property and assuring that any issues related to loitering would be addressed through the HAPD. D, compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. Commission recognizes that there are businesses all around that property, and as a result, that commercial use, this dispensary and its operation would fit in with the commercial uses there on that site. E, conformance with the general plan and city policies. The commission recognizes and accepts the statement from the city staff that this property does comply with the land use, the downtown land use and general plan, and therefore it is in conformance, and it wouldn't create any non-conforming issues. F, screening and buffering of uses. The commission accepts that this property has been around for a long time, that there's a lot of the buffering was already put into place, and also the commission accepts the fact that the owner will add some landscaping planters around the property, as well as providing some stucco on the side of the building. G, unique nature of the property. The commission recognizes that this property has been around for a long time, that it fits in well with a commercial use, and that there wouldn't be any unique characteristics that would require any unusual issues or would create any non-compliance. And then the conditions of approval. And I'm going to say that my motion includes conditions 1 through 16 as stated.
Put the staff permit as a staff that are stated in the staff.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry. Yes, as further, the conditions as stated in the staff report dated July 24th, 2018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
I lost my voting sheet, Madam Chair. Commissioner McGrath.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair. The CUP is approved unless, within 20 days, someone appeals it to the City Council, subject to written reasons and half of the filing fee, and otherwise, your decision stands, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Bring us a good business.
I appreciate your patience with me.
We'll move on to old business. Anything?
No, Madam Chair.
Nothing. New business. We have a presentation and discussion on city sign regulations and the use of conditional use permits for modifications from the code per Apache Junction City Code, Chapter 1, zoning ordinance, paragraph 1-11-15, modifications and appeals.
Madam Chair, as corrected by the city attorney, I put an item on for new business rather than the director's report. Now I have to find out where I put that. So it's in DS. I had it last month. Anyway, What I started to say was, at a retirement event, one of the commissioners asked me, you know, what are the implications of that in terms of the overall sign code? Isn't it a precedent? Then what I did then, and maybe we should have done this during the original presentation, was go to a nearby community, go to the exact same business, go get their sign that they have, and try to understand why that same size may or may not work. So in the attachment, you have what I found was the city of Mesa, and I have a slideshow. I got to find it, if you give me a minute. Essentially, their sign was 208 square feet for the exact same business and the exact same circumstance. So UP. And the other thing that is similar is that where that business, all these power centers are set up pretty much the same. Ours was a different, slightly because it was a Fry's. And so I'm still looking for it. I don't remember. Maybe it's just sitting in here somewhere.
Why don't you just put it up on the thing?
What's that?
You talking the grid thing?
No, I basically took some aerial photography from Google Earth of that shopping center, of our shopping center, to essentially say, you know, our shopping center is obscured by a CVS, by a dental office, by a Walgreens. Something's going to go replace the old Fry's gas station. And when you look at it, and the sign salesman said, oh, we just did this with 500 square feet in Phoenix, 351's not that bad. And then 4 miles away, there's one that's 208 square feet. And it's pretty much hidden behind in kind of the same circumstance. And I apologize that I can't. I should have found it earlier today, but here, I don't know if I can. Let me get out of this. So I'm not trying to, it's not a reconsideration, it's not a vote. I'm just saying maybe we could have done a better job by giving you a better example of a nearby exact same business, similar circumstance, and said, if 208 worked there, why do they need 351 here? Yeah. Now, is 351 a precedent? And what I told Peter was, where I used to work, what the city did was they took the biggest sign in the city. It was nearly 600 square feet, and said everybody can have up to 600 square feet, which would be pretty big, because they wanted to make sure everybody, there was not any nonconformities. I think the idea is that in 2014, the city decided what the sign sizes were, and 150 was the square footage that worked for, I guess, most people. It is unusual for me, getting back to what's on the agenda here, to essentially it's called a conditional use permit, but you're varying from the code. You're using a CUP to ask for something different than other folks have. I'm not used to working in a code where the code is the code. If you don't like the code, you change the code. You don't use a CUP process to give everybody, which we have done, say, okay, that doesn't work for us. The example I gave, the example that we approved, which is in my slideshow that I can't find, was that WikiUp mobile home park. Again, when the sign code did get changed, there's a complete omission on mobile home parks. We have 125 of them, RV parks, mobile home parks. There's nothing in our sign code dealing with those. So we felt that was a fair thing to do, to say, okay, you're essentially commercial. And maybe in some of these neighborhoods where that one particularly is located, it's in an area there's not like single-family homes nearby. So we thought that the 12-foot height was reasonable. In another area, maybe 8-foot would be reasonable, but our code was silent on that. So in any event, when we do get back to the sign code, which I hope is sooner than later, is that my recommendation is, well, let's examine the code. Let's make it work for 95% of the people, Let's make it have some flexibility, but then the code is the code. And then for someone to come in and say, well, I got this thing in Phoenix for 500 square feet. I know what your code says, it's 150, but this other city allowed 5. Well, then I'm saying, let's pull open the whole code book. And let's say, okay, what is the right size for, maybe 150 was too small. Maybe 208's the right size. So, and does it set a precedent?
So you're.
People would say, no, it doesn't set a precedent. Virtually everything we do here sets a precedent in my mind, so.
So your suggestion is this, if I heard you right, is maybe what we need to consider is going to say, everybody could have 500 square feet, and if they want to do less, then they can do less. But
I
make
think there's repercussions to that. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
particular community went through one sign code was almost 3 years, a committee, 3-year committee. Signs were very controversial. So it's nice if things are settled. And then a couple years later, another 17-month sign committee because apparently people didn't like the result of that. New technology comes about. The original sign code didn't deal with the electronic message center. So none of these things are meant to be static. Times change, technology changes, we should be flexible, adaptable. But at the same time, once a decision is made, you ought to let it work for a while and then not have the code be so pliable that it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't mean much. That's a balance, I think, that you have to take, that you have to think about.
When do you think that this will be brought back to us to?
Well, I'm just, at this point, you pretty much went through the sign code.
Yeah,
It's the other 350 pages that are hard to get to, that need to be done.
Okay.
So that's really kind of stuff that we got to focus on right now. I mean, we did the subdivision ordinance. Sammy, he could dedicate his time to that. We're working the counter. We're answering phones. We get interrupted
Yeah.
a lot. And we're short. Stephanie, we had budget issues, so we kept her position open, which is, I guess I could mention that in the director's report, that we are filling that on the 13th. So we're hoping to then get a little more hands here to.
What happened to Danielle?
She's an intern. She's
Oh,
here.
was that?
She's here, but Stephanie was our,
She was, okay, I'm sorry.
let's discuss that under
Sorry,
director.
okay.
so I'm just saying that relates to why we're haven't done the
Joel's
other
going to let us
cases,
know we're
but
getting off the agenda.
That's not your problem, that's my problem.
Okay,
you
so,
know.
can I ask a question about the signage? So, Larry, do you know that 351 square feet that we approved, is that the largest sign package in the city?
Well, Rudy probably would have a better answer to that, but
On an individual occupancy? No, probably the Walmart Supercenter probably has the biggest attached signs.
Oh,
But they were 300 square foot,
that's huge, yeah,
a 300,000 square foot building.
Yeah,
right.
And they came in with a comprehensive sign package for all of their exterior signs, which at that time allowed more signs and it allowed larger signs.
And they actually scaled back then, didn't they?
After a few years, yeah, they actually scaled their signage back.
Yeah.
Their main sign
Yeah.
was just huge.
Huge, yeah.
And when they adopted that little flower symbol, they made all the signs smaller, and it's still, perfectly visible.
okay. Anyone else have anything to discuss on that item? Nothing? Okay. Then we'll go back to the agenda, which is information and reports. Anything?
no, ma'am.
Director's report?
I think I alluded to it, that we are bringing a staff planner on the 13th. That's their first day.
And this is not an intern, this is an employee.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So you'll be seeing Sydney,
Sydney.
who's a he.
I was say male or female?
It's already,
Okay.
I
this
know,
person's
sometimes you have
already,
to explain that, right?
this person's already been hired then?
Yes.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, if that's all, then I'll ask for a motion for the selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on August 14th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Apache Junction City Council Chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard.
Now, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy?
Chairwoman Nestor.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, and unless I hear any objection, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:39.